Hey guys, Barry here, back for another episode of the Comeback Game podcast with Greg Smargiassi.
Smargiassi. There you
Smargiassi.
You've got the hand technique perfect.
Smargiassi. So Greg's a Chief Future Officer, and essentially they help people to see their future using numbers. Greg, how you doing today, mate?
Absolutely awesome. Fantastic, actually, and even better now that I'm getting to spend some time with you, Barry.
Yeah, mate. Pretty pumped for today because we spoke briefly just before, and you're like, hey, looking at the things come through from my team, you're like, the comeback game is very relevant for what you've been through the last 3 years. And so I'm pretty excited for you to share your story with the watchers, the viewers and listeners today. Before we do though, why don't you just tell everyone like who you are and what you guys do?
Okay. So I'm the founder and the CEO of a business called Our CFO, and CFO standing for Chief Financial Officer. I have an accounting background. I've spent many years working in various accounting roles, including tax accounting, internal commercial accounting for a large family business, or retrained as a business coach a number of years ago. So I spent 6 or 7 years in that role, and that was one of the most amazing experiences, learning about businesses beyond the numbers. And now just solely focused on growing our business, which is all around the financial aspect of business, and as you mentioned, helping people see their future using numbers. So we're based in Perth, Western Australia, and looking forward to a conversation today.
Yeah, no, fantastic, mate. And look, obviously we met a few years ago, and what I absolutely loved about you and about the way that you guys do things is often, and no disrespect to any of the accountants or bookkeepers listening today, but often like accountancy can be quite a dry subject and something that goes over most business owners' heads, to be completely honest. We work with hundreds of businesses every year, and a lot of them don't understand how to read their financials well. And although we're not going to dive into that too much today, just kind of wanted to share that one thing that really stood out for me is that you had the ability to articulate effective flow of cash through a business, through balance sheets and profit and loss in such a way that anybody was able to understand that. And you did it through visuals and through diagrams, and it wasn't even spending a lot of time on numbers. And that was something that really stood out for me is someone that knows their stuff so well, they're able to easily articulate it to their audience. But that aside, I want to get to the juicy stuff. What's this comeback game that you're currently on right now?
Everybody has challenges, right? We know how challenging business can be, and as business owners, we take a lot of risk. Yeah. And sometimes the risk it comes with reward, and sometimes it doesn't. And I think if you look at a lot of the entrepreneurs, they'll all tell you that they've had their fair share of challenges and they've had their fair share of, oh my God kind of moments. What's happening here? And so when I received the invitation to do this session with you, it really resonated with me because we're making a big comeback in a really big way, and we've had some serious challenges over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think the opportunity to share my challenge and the challenge that we've had with your audience, I hope will inspire them, help them understand that they're not alone, and that through surrounding yourself with the right people, getting your focus right, that you can get through it. Yeah. And the great thing about it is when you get to the other side, it's a phenomenal feeling. The confidence that it really brings to the fore, the self-belief in that you can handle those challenges, the strength that it creates has really exceeded my expectations. There are times there when I spend a bit of time in the fetal position, sort of wondering, what am I doing?
We've all been there. We've all been there.
So I was based in a regional centre up until about 2.5 years ago, and we moved the business down to Perth. But prior to that, it was Geraldton in Western Australia, and I was at the time running 2 businesses. I was a franchisee of a national coaching network, and I also had the business that we're talking about now, Our CFO. And Geraldton at the time was going great guns. The economy was booming in Western Australia. There was talk of a $5 billion spend in Geraldton for a new port. Mining was going great. Fishing was awesome up in Geraldton with a lot lobster fishing. Farming community have had some challenges, but generally speaking, they do pretty well. So, and the population of Geraldton was forecast to go to 100,000 people, and it's currently sitting at around 40,000 people. So there was all this positive stuff that was at play. And so we invested heavily in our business. We invested in these amazing offices and coaching rooms and boardrooms, and really, and tipped everything, pretty much everything I had went into the business. Super exciting and a great, I loved what I was doing. I loved the experience of being a coach and facilitating and working with lots of people and helping them. So we threw everything at it as entrepreneurs often do. You go all in. There's no half-heartedness about any of it.
Yeah.
So we started planning this in 2010. In 2012, we moved into our new offices, purpose-built for us, and amazing fit out. And the day that we moved in was the day that the writing was on the wall. So we could see what was coming. We were committed. We'd signed a lease agreement, a 5-year lease agreement. The fit out, what we spent on the fit out, everything, funding the business and I had 2 startup businesses, and I was essentially, we'd had some traction, we had some success, and we wanted to go to the next level. And as soon as we moved in, the rot set in, the decline started. So the mining came off very quickly. And, business coaching up in Geraldton at the time, when businesses started experiencing problems, they were just like, chop, we get, that's an optional extra, going to chop that expense out. So we went from, running at full tilt to that business essentially being closed down, within 18 months of moving into our new digs. Yeah. So we still had 3.5 years to go. We signed up a lease at the top end of the market, so we're paying top rates, and literally saw the coaching business implode pretty much overnight, compared to where we started. So we had a massive, decline in revenue and work. And then, of course, there was the CFO side of the business, and we don't position ourselves as cheap operators. We value price, and we're not cheap. We focus on quality, and so we're getting a lot of pricing pressure. People wanted reductions in their fees, and then to add more into the equation, a number of our clients were experiencing financial difficulty because hard times had hit. So there was a whole bunch of pressure to find solutions for our clients because they were distressed financially. Mm-hmm. So there was all this pressure coming on. You're the CFO or the external CFO. You've got to find the answers for us, and you've got to find it fast because we're in decline here. So it was what I would call a perfect storm. We had our own challenges. We had challenges that we were expected to resolve for our clients or on behalf of our clients. And it was frightening. And I saw everything that I'd worked for. It was just literally going up in smoke right in front of my eyes. And so we thought, well, we need to do something. We can't just sit on our hands here and just, hope that it's going to turn around by itself. So we made a pretty tough call to move the business to Perth to get to exposure to a bigger market. And we'd been attempting to expand down here from Geraldton, but it just wasn't working. And so we had to make a call. We had to get into a bigger market. So we were still committed to the lease in Geraldton. So we had to deal with that. We had to find some space down here to operate from. So our costs actually increased again because of that. And, we had to, very quickly sell the house, sell the car, sold everything pretty much to get through the challenges and see if we could pop out the other side. Anyway, we got down to Perth and spent a fair bit of time getting reorganized down here and just holding on. And then I became physically sick, physically ill. So the stress, the pressure, I've been sitting all of my life, as many of us office workers do. And I'd had a lot of back pain, from my lower back right up through my thoracic spine, between my shoulders. I've got a compressed disc in my neck. And got to the point where the pain had gone over the top of my head, and I had this headache for 6 weeks, and it was debilitating. I was working at a pace that would challenge anybody, even in good health, and I was not in good shape at all. So it got to a point where being totally vulnerable here and honest, that I thought that if this is life, it's just not for me. It's just not what I signed up for. So there were a few fleeting moments there where I thought, well, there could be an easier option here, and that is just to exit. And that was a really a low ebb that we got to. And anyway, so one day I was going through an airport, and I bumped into a guy that I used to play football with, and I used to work with him, and we were talking, and I was telling him about my physical setup, and I'd been to doctors, and I'd getting head scans, and they're looking for cancer and brain tumors and all this kind of stuff. So there's all this stress that was happening, and we're still dealing with clients and our own challenges. And he told me about a guy that he used to get his physical health back into shape, and he's an amazing person, and he just was talking very highly about this guy. And I said, look, I think I need to talk to him. So I went to see this guy. His name is Brady. He's an ex-AFL footballer. He still looks like an elite athlete, and he's an incredible human being. Like, this guy is just amazing in terms of what he understands about physical health, and he understands how physical health transcends into mental and emotional health. So he's a really special guy. And he's not cheap. So this guy's based on St. George's Terrace. He works with executives. So senior executives of major companies and all sorts of people. He's trained supermodels, and he's worked all around the world and studied in New York City, and and we're at a point where it's like, can I actually afford this guy? And then ask myself the question, well, can I afford not to have this guy? So to make that work, the last thing I had to sell was my car. So I did. I sold the car, and so that I could fund this guy's fees. And so it was the last roll of the dice. It was like, I'm either going to, smash it out of the park and get better, or I'm going down swinging. I'm going down swinging hard, and I'm going to work this out. If I don't, well, I've given it my best shot. So I got involved, and Brady started training me, and within 3 months had completely turned my world around, like you would not believe. And so the thing that has gotten me through all of that is getting super focused on my physical health and making sure that I am strong, I'm flexible, my posture is a lot better than what it used to be. Sitting in front of a computer, your head goes forward. Your head actually is 10% of your body weight. So he gave me a weight. He gave it to me, and he said, hold on to that. So he put it in my hand. It was an 8 kilogram weight, because it's, I'm 80 kilos. And he said, hold on to that for 3 minutes, just, at an angle like that. And so I held on to it, and I'm like, wow, this is really challenging me to hold on to this weight. And he said, well, that's what you're doing with your head. So if you're not holding your posture right, and your head goes forward, that's why he feels that I've got a compressed disc in my neck, because it's been years and years and years of, sitting in front of a computer with my head forward. And I have gone head first into the bottom of the ocean surfing. So it could have been that, or it could have been, my posture. So I got my posture organized, got my physical. I'm back to the same weight that I was when I was a teenager. So I'm now 48, and I'm now back to, yep. No, if I was 48 kilos, I'd be looking pretty gaunt, I'd say. But so I'm back to the same weight that I was when I was 18. I feel the best that I've ever felt physically, and what that has translated to in terms of my emotional health, my mental health, and my ability to work at the level that I do has taken me by surprise. It surprised me. Once I went to him for pain relief, and what I came out with was a whole new way of looking at life and the ability to take on the challenges that we do. So now I've been training with him for about 2 years, and I'm up at 4 o'clock every morning. I have breakfast. I've got my routine. I stretch. I do strength training, and the first 2 to 3 hours of every day is all about looking after me and getting my ability, my physical health, my mental and emotional health ready for the day.
Yeah.
So I'm at work at 6:30, 7 in the morning, and it's still a lot of challenges out there that we're dealing with for our clients. So I'm dealing with up to 20 businesses at a time, and they're substantial businesses. So I've got to turn my attention from one client matter to the next client matter to the next, and being able to shift my focus from one client to another, and be totally present for them in that moment, and deal with their challenges and help them, in that space of being an external CFO.
Yeah.
And the good news is that we've completely turned the business around. Our pipeline of new opportunities is just incredible. So we've had to turn the tap off from a marketing perspective. My take on life is completely and utterly different, where I guess one of the positive things that came out about that was, I absolutely and utterly care about our clients.
Yeah.
Totally. And at the same time, I don't. I've been able to let go of a lot of worry.
Yeah.
We do our very best every single day.
Yeah.
But there's a
but not at the detriment of your own health and your own
not,
well-being.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's really the real hero's journey. We say it's like there's no surprise that the movie directors use the hero's journey to script their movies, in terms of, it's like you're down and out. You're debating whether or not this is the end, whether it's not time for you to kind of exit. And at that moment in time, the person turns up with the sage advice, with the recommendation, with the invitation to Yoda, or to somebody who can help essentially provide the tools or the strategies or the structure to start rebuilding things from scratch. And it's interesting too, like you talk about turning things off from a marketing perspective, because one thing that I strongly believe is that we never have a business problem, ever. We only ever have personal problems that are reflected through our business.
Yep.
And if we are not looking after ourselves, or if we're having these severe health issues, which comes from us not looking after ourselves, we can talk about it being from work, but that's a secondary symptom to the core effect being that we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not prioritizing our health or our well-being over that of our clients, or that of our family, or that of our friends, or that of people outside of ourselves. And so it's no surprise that once you pulled yourself back into alignment, the business has then been able to reflect that.
Yeah.
Shift in you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unfortunately with human nature, we have to get to rock bottom before we do something different. I guess I can only talk from my own experience, but it seems to be what prevails. We have to feel a certain level of pain before we do something different. And, with hindsight, I would do things differently. But I guess the other thing that I've, and I intellectualize a lot of stuff. Success comes from failure, and I've known that for a long time.
I think in the beginning, Greg, from my experience, or from what I've kind of seen through a lot of people work with as well, I think at the beginning, let's just say when we're less conscious to some degree, it's like we have to be hit a bit harder to kind of wake up. And I feel that the more that we, have those experiences, the more that we start to sort of self-calibrate and become more self-aware. So that the aspect of failure is still vitally important to our success. But the difference is as we progress through life, we don't need to continuously hit rock bottom to have that wake-up call, because we've kind of allowed those failures in the past to shape us and allow us to kind of calibrate in such a way that we're more self-aware of when we're kind of starting to steer off course because of those past learnings and experiences. Like, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's very true. What has come as a result of the experience that I've had is a higher level of self-belief. When I look back in days gone by, there's always the doubt there that, I'm not good enough, or I'm not skilled enough, or, whatever that is. We put the glass ceiling on, and the glass ceiling, I'm not sure where it is right now, but it's I can't see it. So the self-belief that's come with it, and the strength that's come with it, I feel now that I'm capable of anything.
Yeah.
And it's just, really getting my focus right, surrounding myself with the right people, being a sponge for information, being a learner, constantly learning, absolutely anything is possible. And I truly believe that.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's just a feeling that I've got, but it kind of feels like that, back 2010, or I think you said it was, when you're kind of going after there seemed to be almost a little bit more of a drive from the ego to create something quite big. You're going after a big piece of the pie. You're outlaying a lot. You're going after a lot of clients, and it kind of feels, and as I said, I could be wrong, but the shift is different now. You're working with a small level of clients. You value yourself a lot more. You value your clients a lot more. Therefore, you're charging the price appropriate for that style of work. But it feels to me that you have made a shift within yourself around that as well. Is that, is that a correct assumption?
Yeah. But I have been spending quite a bit of time getting to know my ego over the last little period, and there's a great model. I think it might have come from Tony Robbins, or I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but talking about the ego needs. And one of my ego needs is definitely significance. So I get significance out of the work that I do. One of my other needs is variety. So I work with lots of different people, different businesses. So I'm really aware of my ego and what it needs. So I manage it and make sure that I'm feeding my ego needs in a positive sense rather than negatively. And then the other part of it is, getting that balance between what my ego is doing and what my soul needs for, to get that balance. And, I just want to change, and I just want to help people at the end of the day. I want to change the accounting profession. That's probably more ego driven. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of stress that is experienced in small and medium-sized businesses, I believe, that is unnecessary.
Yeah.
And by using numbers, I can let people know when they need to stress. I can also let them know when they don't need to. Yeah. And a lot of the time, I would say 70% of the time, there's a lot of things that people worry about that they don't really need to worry about. But if we can communicate clearly, for example, why their profit and loss report says one thing and the bank account says something else, if they understand that, then there's no need to stress about it.
Yeah.
Whereas people often stress about that, and stress usually comes from they either don't have control over something or they don't understand something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like the fear of the unknown, right? False evidence appearing real.
Yes, that's fear. Yeah.
That lack of planning and preparation, and lack of really having clarity around what's actually going on. Yeah. When you look back now, though, like with hindsight, obviously, you've shared that you've spent quite a lot of time in self-reflection, and I know from the conversations we have, you're a very wise man. Like looking back now over the journey you've been on, just not just the last 7 years, but I suppose the journey of your life. Like, what do you think have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned through those trials and tribulations?
It's a great question. There are so many. I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier. A business is like a mirror. Everything that's great about the business is a reflection. Everything that's not so good about the business is also a reflection. So to improve a business, it's usually about the leadership or the leader or the owner or whatever that might be. So that's definitely been a big learning for me. And that's what led me down the path of personal development and introspection and understanding myself and who I am. We've also talked about the ego. That's been very enlightening. People often say I haven't got an ego. Well, that's the case when you're dead, but as long as you've got a heartbeat and you're alive, well then you do have an ego. So we just need to understand it, get to know it, build a relationship with it, and work on using the ego for good. So I think that's been another great learning. And then in our conversation today, how important physical health is. If we want to operate at high level, then we need to be elite athletes. We need to look after ourselves. You need to look after yourself first before you can really look after other people. So spending time consciously taking care of yourself, super important, and that's a priority now.
I like the word consciously, because I feel that often we make a lot of decisions in life unconsciously because we believe we haven't got another choice. And it's once we bring in the fact that we have choice, we can then consciously choose to create our future.
Yes.
And I think that's important, because if you look at life, life is duality, right? You have light and you have dark. And mentor told me once, you can't get rich collecting one-sided coins. And I think often in life, people seek the journey, or the journey is sold to somebody that if you just do enough personal development, or if you just master yourself, or, hey, just be happy all the time. And I think the reality is that, God, Buddha, whatever you choose to believe in, has given us a plate of emotions. We've got a whole entire smorgasbord of emotions. So what makes us feeling happy any different to us feeling sad? What allows there to be more points allocated around the emotion of happiness than sadness? They're both an emotion that we can choose to feel. But I think where a lot of us get stuck is that we don't realize we have a choice. And if we are feeling something, it's not the matter that we're feeling sad. It's what comes after that when we choose to beat ourselves up about feeling sad. We drive down the road and we get a popped tire. Instead of getting out and just changing the thing, it's like we get out and stab the other 3 tires out. I see that a lot. You talk about business owners. It's like, they get frustrated because they've made a mistake, or they've spent money on something they shouldn't have, or they should have been, they hired the bookkeeper who wrecked their books, or whatever the case may be. Oh, that's happened. But I think where people really destroy themselves is that then they go and beat themselves up about the decision that's already been made that they can't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than using that energy and focusing that energy towards creating their future or creating a different decision moving forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's so true. I think there's, and I've done that, and when I'm not my best version of myself, and, again, with a bit of self-reflection, I can see that, and it happens. So it's, for me, it's being able to recognize when that's happening and then adjust behavior.
Yeah.
So, my team have permission. So we've got this model, which is called working above the line, below the line. It's not our original IP, but we got it from somewhere else. And everyone on the team has permission to call me when I'm working below the line, which does happen. So, I don't believe in perfect. It's a concept that is contained in the dictionary, and we're imperfect. For that. And so if we accept that we are imperfect, well, then we need to understand when we're being imperfect and how we can be our best version of ourselves.
Yeah. We're imperfectly perfect.
Yes.
I think perfection only kind of exists in nature. Well, that's my belief. I think anything outside of nature, we're imperfectly perfect. And I love the fact that you have that. We have a very similar thing with our team as well, is that, if someone's not playing to the core values of our company or playing above the line, you've got full permission to call them out, whether it's me or whether it's, my general manager, or whether it's anybody else in the team, because, that's what we talk about. That's healthy growth. That's healthy failure.
Yes.
That's healthy ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to go back and give like the 12-year-old version of you one piece of advice, knowing all that you know now, like what would you say to him?
Well, I'm a closet musician, and if I look back on those days, being a musician was so far away from what I thought was possible.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is say, hey, look, if that's what you really want to do, you can actually do that.
Yeah.
You can. And whatever it is for any person, really believing that whatever you want to do is totally and utterly possible. You just need to do it. You need to believe in yourself. And there's you can go through all, what is, how do you become successful? And that could be another topic. But self-belief, I believe, is something that often is lacking for people. So just really believing in yourself and do, whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it. You got to work at it. It's not just going to turn up, but just believe in yourself.
How do you think one would start? Because I can imagine we could talk to this 12-year-old version of you and be like, dude, just believe in yourself, go after anything you want. But how does one who's listening to this right now or watching this going, yeah, I get that. I've heard that before. But I just don't believe myself. Like, what do you think? And I'm happy to chip in as well. Like, how does someone start to think about that? Or how does someone start to indoctrinate a belief about themselves when maybe they've been down and out, or their partner's left them, or they're in financial hardship, or their business is not where they think it should be, or they think they should be a lot further ahead than what they are in life? Yeah.
Well, I think the really important thing to do is to understand why you are what you are. Where did your beliefs come from? Why is there a level of non-belief? Where has that come from? Where did the conditioning come from? What event occurred in your life that shaped that belief, or events that shaped that belief? So usually it'll, with all due respect to my parents, for example, they did the very best.
And all the parents out there.
And all the parents. I mean, there's no one, there'd be plenty of books on, raising kids, but, again, you can intellectualize stuff, being able to handle real situations, two different things.
Yeah.
So what I've done, well, for what worked for me, was to understand where I came from, where my beliefs come from, how they were shaped, what major experiences in my life occurred that, or either positive or negative, that shaped my belief systems, and just creating awareness around it.
I had an interesting conversation with my mother the other day. Mum, if you're listening to this, which I'm sure you probably are, I love you. Because what had happened is I recorded this interview. Someone interviewed me, And I started diving into the topic around like masculine and feminine energy in relationships. And I got super passionate, which I don't usually do, but it is something I've been doing a lot of research around the last 12 to 18 months, and the topic I really love. And I shared all this stuff around kind of my upbringing and a bit around my parents. And, you know, mum gave it a love heart and, you know, comment as she does. And we spoke on the phone, and then something else happened. So I thought I better go back and listen to this interview again. I listened to it. And when I listened to it back from not being in it, I was like, wow, I didn't quite articulate on this interview what I was thinking and feeling in a way that people listening to it could translate that. Like I've had this bit of a challenge in my brain, whereas often what I say and what I feel don't quite match. And so I ended up calling my mum, and I was like, Mum, I just want to touch base in the interview and just kind of create this preface for anything you ever listen to or consume of me again. That if at any point in time it sounds like I'm being disrespectful to you and Dad, just know that I'm not. Just know that I love you guys. And we dove into a deep conversation where, you know, she did have these feelings that she wasn't quite good enough as a mother, or she didn't quite do a good enough job raising us. And, you know, I remember years ago when I started getting into personal development, I very much put guilt onto her and Dad around the way that they brought me up, because that was the level of where my ego was at the point in time. They're very much like, when you start to kind of, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice, right? And so when you start to enter the personal development world, you start getting squeezed, and what comes out is what's inside.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, what's inside is not necessarily love and fulfillment and appreciation and gratitude and all these things that we eventually get to. It's usually like anger and resentment and,
yes,
and rage and anxiety and so forth. And so, you know, I said to Mum, I was like, look, regardless of what I've probably said many, many years ago, like I'm at a place now I realize that you and Dad only ever did the absolute best that you could to bring us up. I don't think any parent ever goes out there and is like, I'm going to see how much I can fuck up my kid's life. Like, I don't think any parent ever goes out there with that intention, regardless of what they've got going on for themselves. I don't think anybody would ever go out with that intention. And at any stage, they're only ever doing what's available to them, the best that's available to them. But in hindsight's a great thing. You know, how often in hindsight can we look back at a decision and go, oh, hey, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have rented that really expensive place in Geraldton and spent the money on fit out. But at that point in time, you guys made the absolute best decision that was available to you on your menu of life.
Yes.
But at that point in time, the menu was an impoverished menu. The menu lacked other things that later showed up 2 years down the track.
Yep.
And so I like what you share too, is that I think that where it first starts, because beliefs, these beliefs people talk about, negative beliefs, they've actually served us. Like, they're like, why do we have these beliefs? Why do I have these beliefs that I'm not good enough, or I'm not valued, or I don't belong, or blah, blah, blah. But when we created these beliefs as a child, we hadn't yet fully developed our logical thinking, our right and left cerebral cortexes.
Yep.
And so a lot of this patterning was created as safety patterning to keep us safe. But as a 33-year-old or a 48-year-old or however old that you are right there out there, these beliefs often no longer serve you, which is why they're now perceived as negative beliefs or being outdated. And so by trying to push them away or resist them, like what we resist persists.
Yes.
Whereas like you talked about, Greg, if you can first start to like look at them and question them and go, okay, well, where did they come from and what caused them? What created them? And see them in a light of actually appreciation, love and gratitude, because they have served us. We actually allow ourselves to become whole again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I think of all the journey, not just in the last 3 or 4 years, but say the last 20 years, when I started my first business when I was 30, it was January 2000, when the world was going to fall over with the Y2K bug.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you remember that. You're a bit younger than I am, Barry.
Everything was going to explode and the world wasn't going to exist after year 2000.
Yeah. And I observed sort of what I did over that period of time. So, some people say, wow, you're crazy. You're starting a business from scratch and you get no clients. And so there was that belief that I could actually do that. But when I looked at what happened for the first 10 years whilst I was in business, it was always about keeping it small and not expanding, and now whether you choose to have a small business or something that's a bit bigger, it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
My choices were being driven by the conditioning that I had largely from my parents. And again, I'm not blaming my parents. Back then I probably was.
Yeah.
But now I'm not. And then there was a number of events that occurred and, changed my thinking and changed my direction, which I'm so grateful for all of that. And when I look at my dad, who's, bless him, he's 83 going on 84, still renovating bathrooms. He's still working. He's a builder. He's a tradesman. And so he migrated to Australia after the Second World War as a young Italian man. And when he got off the boat in Fremantle, they literally had big hoses and they'd squirt everybody down like cattle, making sure they weren't carrying any bugs. And then you'd get off the boat, you've just been squirted. You're in this country that you've never been before in the late 40s. And the Italians weren't super popular during World War II. So to come out to Australia and make a whole new life, and he sacrificed his whole life, really. He put his family first. So he was the oldest of all his siblings. He came out with his father. They got a start, and then the rest of the family came out. And then, he met my mother and they got married, and, I've got 2 great brothers. And so he put everything else before himself to give us a start. And he gave me an education. The upbringing in a small country town was amazing. I wouldn't change anything about that. And there's so much that I can be thankful for in the way that my father, gave me a start in life. He wanted to be a small business. And that's what he did. So I adopted that approach. Right or wrong doesn't really matter, but it's where it all came from. And so, I've been able to really understand a lot of things about myself and about my family just by exploring it.
Yeah. I'm going to put something out there for the viewers and for the listeners today. Like, what if somewhere in time, what if somewhere in existence, in the planning dimension, we actually chose our parents? We made a conscious decision before we were born to choose our parents that were going to provide us with the learnings that we needed to gather. And so what if for a long time, most people have been seeing things wrong? Or there's no right and wrong, but what if for a long time people have been seeing things the opposite way around, where they've been seeing the way they've been brought up as a curse or as a problem or as a challenge, rather than actually seeing that the way they've been brought up has been a blessing to help them to discover and to become who they are today. And that when they start to own that, they can actually start to own their true, unique magnificence of who they really are for themselves and for the world.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting exercise to go through. And, I, might say, well, maybe I would pick somebody differently because they would have told me to believe myself and I might have been, a rock star.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, I'm very lucky I've got purpose, but I have a very different take on numbers, as you know.
Yeah.
So maybe it was the universe saying, hey, look, we need you to change up the way that numbers are presented, because that's going to make a massive difference to the whole business community, which then in turn makes a difference to the people that are employed by those businesses and the families that they support.
Yeah.
And so you know what? I couldn't live out of a suitcase if you paid me. Like, it's just not my thing.
I couldn't see with a bunch of piercings and black leather anyway. Let's be honest. The banking system and the tax system, the accounting system is created to confuse us.
Yeah.
It's not created in such a way that business owners have the competitive advantage and know how to win. Like, the system has been created with confusion in mind.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of this, when as a young graduate accountant, I used to love quoting case law and sections of the Act and making myself look really special. And I did think I was special when I graduated from university, embarrassingly so. And, I remember the first day at work and my manager walked in back in the early 90s before we had PCs on our desks, and they had his brown paper bag and she turned it upside down and all these bank statements and check stubs fell out of this brown paper bag. And it's like, what do I do with that? She's like, well, you've got to read the business owner's handwriting in their check stubs and see if you can decipher it. And then you've got to code each individual transaction in pencil on the bank statement. And it's like, did I go to university for 3 years to do that?
Yeah.
And so, it pegged me back a couple of notches, but certainly being guilty of attempting to look intelligent as an accountant and confuse people. And so I could justify my fees. And then through, again, a process of learning, just learned that was the least amount of value. That was just not providing value.
Yeah. Comes back to that unresourceful significance a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
looking good and looking smart.
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. So
Accentuating yourself in such a way that unconsciously you're kind of lowering somebody else to fulfill your own needs.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Mate, we might have to wrap it up there. I'm
Mm.
in this brain treatment building with the tradie up in the ceiling starting to make some noise. But mate, it's been an amazing conversation. I reckon we get you back. I reckon we can dive even deeper. This has been lots of fun. So if you guys want to get Greg back, just let us know in the comments. And please, as always, share it around to your friends and family and people that you think need to hear this most. Maybe even your parents. Share it with your parents as well.
Yes. Yeah, see how that goes.
Yeah. Greg Smargiassi, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Did I get your last name right?
You did exceptionally well, and I love the body language as well. You've mastered that one.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to chatting the next one. If people want to reach out to you, do you want people to reach out to you? And if you do, how do they find you?
Yeah, they can jump online, and we've got a really nice website they can check out. So if they go to ourcfo.com.au, you'll see all of our details there on LinkedIn, Facebook, or the usual social media. So if you want to say g'day, feel free to do so. And thank you, Barry. You're an amazing human being. You inspire me probably more than you recognise or more than you know. And thanks again for the opportunities you've been giving me as well to connect and share the way that we do.
Oh, mate, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Barry. Speak soon.